Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Jakub Mamulski, and currently I'm a social media and community management specialist at 10 Square Games. And today's presentation regards many purposes of social media management in the industry. And it is made in mind with both people who don't deal with social media management, with juniors, and also with intermediate and senior people who deal with this topic. As it is going to be kind of general, I'd say, but it is to kind of show context what brands actually can do in order to engage their players in social media. And let's move on to the next slide. This is probably, number-wise, the best post I've ever made on Facebook. As you can see, it had reach of more than 150,000. Actually, it was way closer to 200,000. It had more than 26,000 comments, more than 10,000 reactions, 372 shares, general activities, and by activities I mean comments, reactions, shares, and clicks, was more than 60,000, 20% ER. We spent no money on it, and we gained 11,000 fans on Facebook in one day. And the thing is that aside from these numbers, it doesn't really matter. Of course, numbers do look quite nicely in KPI reports and such stuff. But the thing is that this particular post was made in order to achieve two grander goals. The first one was to sorry about it. The first one was to enforce stronger cooperation with the product team, as we saw a pretty big field that could be utilized, just to synergize, basically. And the second thing is that we wanted to create a brand image which was more positive than before posting this particular lottery. Yeah, and when it comes to the table of contents, firstly, I'm going to start with absolute basics, which is defining social media as a whole. Then I'll move to social media use from the business perspective. And after talking about these two topics, I'll move on to explaining 9, I believe, cardinal purposes of social media communication in the gaming industry. And after this part, I'll briefly talk about social media team composition. Okay, so when it comes to defining social media, these are forms of electronic communication, such as websites for social networking and microblogging, through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content, such as videos. When it comes to the industry, we need to specify one thing. This particular definition means that practically any website that utilizes some sort of user engagement and creating their own content is a social media site. So, for example, Znany lekarz, a site which can be used for checking out doctors online and for making appointments, can be considered a social media site. But from our point of view, we are going to talk about social media which is like more conventional, stuff like Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and this lot. And when it comes to social media usage from the business perspective, there are like 6 main principles. And the first one is brand development, and it includes employer branding, product branding, and such. The second is customer engagement. Then it's customer retention and loyalty, increasing market reach, gathering info and feedback, and pay-per-click campaign platforms. However, people do not like being sold stuff. And people on social media, in general, well, there's this big list of 10 main purposes of social media usage when it comes to natural persons. But we can pretty much round it down to 3 main principles. The first one is to be updated. The second one is to express themselves. And the third one is, simply put, to have fun. And in order to conduct effective social media communications, you need to establish your objectives and fulfill both yours and your audiences. And here are the practical purposes. The first purpose is increasing brand awareness. And I will also address one thing. Before every purpose, there will be such a, let's call it, board with the actual purpose. Then I'll move to a little case study. And after that, I will use an accessory question which is going to regard this particular purpose. And over here, you can see a tweet on the left side made by Arc System Works. They made Guilty Gear this year. And as you can see, this particular post is quite silly, because we have tall, blonde and gorgeous, painfully thick, and then Borger. And the important thing about this post is, well, you can't really see well, but at the bottom, it amassed almost 12,000 likes and more than 2,500 retweets. And because of that virality, a lot of people who were previously not familiar with the Guilty Gear franchise realized that such a thing exists, and that, aside from, of course, having anime girls, that it is probably quite interesting. And when it comes to increasing brand awareness, I'm quite aware that a lot of, especially small studios, do struggle with figuring out where to start. And even though I work at 10 Square Games and we have figured out a pretty consistent social media communication plan for new products, figuring it out was also quite hard at the beginning. But here are 4 main principles that can help with communicating either as an entire studio or just when it comes to a single brand communication. So, firstly, you need to know where your players are. So, for example, let's say that you have a product that is aimed at 40+ males from the USA. And using TikTok for organic communication, and by organic I mean not paid, is probably not really the best idea. Of course, it can be kind of helpful, but putting most of your money and focus into this particular channel simply doesn't make much sense when you can make easier content and simply gather a bigger following on Facebook. The second thing is to figure out if you can run social media or if you have personnel to do so. And this speaks for itself. The third one is thinking about what you exactly want to achieve. I kind of have a feeling that a lot of people do believe that, I'm going to use a Polish proverb now, that social media are just sztuka dla sztuki, which means the art for the sake of creating art. And a lot of people kind of do run their social media like that. But establishing actual purposes really helps with achieving your set goals, and it makes everything more clarified and practical. And the fourth point, check out if you have proper knowledge and tools to conduct a high-quality social media communication process. Okay, the second purpose is obtaining feedback. And this little case that I've prepared for you, this is actually a post I made. It regards quite a lot of topics, as you can see at the top in the copy. It's, well, a lot happened in August. Did you like changes and events introduced to the game last month? What do you think about the Fishy Bank, which was a new monetization feature that we introduced in this month? And let us know in the comments below. And I believe that a lot of decent quality feedback can be gathered in social media, especially when you kind of push people in the proper direction. And because of that, I used two CTAs. CTA is a call to action. The first one is let us know in the comments below, and the second one is on the image, share your feedback. And a lot of feedback gathered from social media can be kind of tricky to process because of the changes that were made to the terms of use of Facebook a short while ago, probably, I don't know, like 4 years. You can't really scrape data from it anymore, so it is hard to automate it. But a lot of people simply share their thoughts, and whether you put them in a spreadsheet later on or just draw some conclusions, it is quite worthwhile. And an accessory question to this purpose is listening to a single person's opinion worth my time? And talking to a single person for prolonged periods of time seems like the antithesis of productivity. However, we need to realize that a single person's idea isn't any less than an idea of a bigger group of people. And non-scalable activities like having long chats regarding your game with a single person can sometimes be extremely insightful. While companies tend to operate on big amounts of data, which is not a bad thing, we need to remember that single ideas can sometimes make or break the business. Such activities can also show people that you care about them. Yeah. And the third purpose is engaging followers outside of your product. In this small case study, there's a tweet sent from the Sonic the Hedgehog official Twitter account. They used to be pretty wild back in the day, but they've tamed and turned down their communications, well, a short while ago. And brands sometimes focus too much on themselves, forgetting that the whole world outside of their product exists. And it's good to address real-life events such as holidays or cultural phenomena. On the other hand, your game needs to maintain its identity. And maintaining identity is what I really enjoy about this particular post, because they used it is a monster, an enemy monster, I believe, from one of many Sonic games, and it is an interesting nod to people who are really deep down in the franchise. And this particular accessory question doesn't really address any specific topic, but it is rather, I'd say, oriented towards the general nature of engagement. And I called it, is having a Twitter account with 742 followers worth it? And I believe it is worth it, because despite not really looking very impressive, it is 742 people who took their time and who followed you on social media. And nowadays, when everything is so streamlined, well, I do believe that we probably have a lot of game designers here, and you do realize how addictive a gameplay loop can be. And these people enjoy it so much that they took their time and broke out of it and followed you on Twitter, which is, I believe, a pretty nice gesture of them. And you also need to keep in mind that social media management is a pretty long process. So even though you only have these 742 followers right now, it is quite possible that these numbers will expand. And from the business point of view, you have 742 quality leads to sell to. Okay, the next purpose is obtaining analytical data. And obtaining such data and processing it afterwards helps with market research and with adapting the studio's communication strategy. And this can be extremely helpful for creating marketing personas. And if you happen to use Facebook, and if you noticed the new layout of the fan page, they got rid of the old Analytics tab, and it is, I believe, a big step backwards, unfortunately. And this particular question is, how can I create a sales persona? And simply put, take all of the data you have regarding the demographics of your audience and try to create the most representative example of them. Takes stuff like age, sex, location, purchase power, and interests into consideration. And such personas are often used in content creation, in pitching sales, in figuring out proper communication channels, setting communication and monetization strategies, and in investor relations stuff. The next purpose is creating and pivoting a brand's image. And for this particular case study, I chose, World of Warcraft, because we are all quite aware of the debacle that happened earlier in the year at Activision Blizzard. And what they did here was pretty ingenious, because they didn't really mention the situation. As you can see, well, there's quite a lot of words in this particular post, but the thing is that they do not even mention Activision Blizzard. Because of this, they maintain their very own identity, and they ensure players that despite all of the stuff that was going on, the product is not endangered in any way, and it will continue to develop. And people really, as you can see by the reactions, did enjoy this particular piece of communication. And showing people that your brand cares about their opinions is quite a tricky thing to do, because from the business perspective, of course, we would probably not have anything against cranking up the monetization as hard as it gets. But on the other hand, people would probably like the actual opposite of it. And you simply need to meet halfway. And discussing such activities with the product team and delivering feedback is a pretty decent way to actually conduct them. And you also need to really introduce those changes into the game, because simply talking about a will to change stuff isn't going to do much unless there is action. Increasing player retention rates. And this is mostly targeted towards people who deal with free-to-play titles. And reminding people about your game may drive traffic to it. While it's probably the most important in the case of games which frequent updates and live ops support, it's good to let people know that there are reasons to get back to your title. And this post showcases a new piece of content in Hunting Clash, a games book, I believe it's how it's pronounced. And new content in general performs well when it comes to monetization, so it's good to get as many people to experience it as possible. And the accessory question in this case is, how can I increase retention rates if I don't introduce a lot of new content to the game? And this particular question is aimed at people who don't really have live ops support and such. And firstly, you need to have a good product, so people will get back to it simply for the sake of quality. Secondly, try to change it over time. Thirdly, host events for the community, such as tournaments, speedruns, and Q&As. And fourthly, work on new stuff, as you won't be able to constantly sell the game over and over again. And providing customer support and crucial statements regarding your product's availability is another purpose. Here is a post that we made a short while ago. And when it comes to accessibility of the game and technical issues, it is usually issue management or sometimes even crisis management. And it is rarely pleasing, but it simply needs to be done. And in this case, as you can see, we had a maintenance break scheduled for about 2 hours. And such a communication was issued because we wanted to let people know that there is going to be such a break, so they won't be able to access the game, and also to be more transparent with them. And people really do appreciate transparent brands. And also, because of the nature of social media, your posts aren't going to reach all of your fans, all of your followers. So the support is still going to get tickets regarding, well, the fact that the game isn't working. But it's not really a big deal from, of course, the support point of view. However, it is still nice to decrease the number of tickets they get. And this particular post was used for a planned maintenance. And what about stuff that isn't planned? And there are like 6 important rules of such issue management. Well, actually 7. And the 7th one, I'll start from the wrong side. The 7th one is to be swift in your communications. But yeah, you need to acknowledge the problems. You need to calm down the community, because people really do sometimes freak out and they may believe that the game is no more, or that their data is in danger and whatever. And it's in 99.9% not really the case. You need to be transparent, at least to an extent. And I mean by this that people don't actually really need to know the entire truth, because, well, behind the break. For example, there was a case we had a few days ago. Our server provider shut down for a few hours, and there was really nothing we could do with that. So in order to protect the provider's good name and to still address the issue, we didn't tell people about the nature of the problem and update the community about the progress of fixes, remain composed. And if you have ever dealt or will deal with social media communication, you will most likely be tempted to provide some sort of a deadline, and don't. Yeah. User acquisition, and it is pretty much sales. And today I was at a roundtable regarding indie game marketing, and it occurred to me that there is quite a big difference between sales in the mobile gaming industry and in the more traditional console and PC user acquisition. And for example, when you generally try to acquire new users in mobile games, your primary campaign goal is to achieve new conversions. And when it comes to, for example, Steam games, which can't really be tracked as well as, for example, mobile games, you most likely want to aim for traffic. And when it comes to this little case study, you have probably seen the Summoner's Greed social media creations, and despite the fact that they use third-party IP and that they create their brand as, oh, we are so little, please check us out and such. It really works out for them, and I believe that they have surpassed more than 1 million players at the moment, but it still works. And is it normal to detest people who misrepresent their games in the ads? And yes, it is. Another purpose is employer branding and recruitment efforts. And finding people to join your company can be hard and expensive. And social media allows to both post job openings and to create such an image of your company that people may want to work for you. And this is one of the rare cases where LinkedIn communication makes a lot of sense in our industry. I suppose you are all familiar with LinkedIn, and when it comes to users of LinkedIn in our industry, the first one and the most obvious is using it to enhance the recruitment process. Then it's employer branding, and a lot of people also used LinkedIn on their personal profiles in order to share their portfolio and to build their personal branding. And how can I convince people to join my studio? And there is quite a lot of factors when it comes to actually convincing people to join your studio. But they are as follows. It's salary, fun and fulfilling projects, ability to learn and to build a fine portfolio, possibility to work remotely, benefits, opinions about the studio among its present and former employees, opinions about the studio among its other stakeholders, career development opportunities, employee advocacy, and CSR activities. And yeah, these are the main purposes. And as I have mentioned earlier, there is quite a lot more. However, unfortunately, there probably isn't going to be really a lot of time to go through all of them. So I will just mention a couple of them. For example, at our products at 10 Square Games, we sometimes share posts that are strictly aimed at the community and at the community features in our games, namely clans, clubs. You know the lot. And a pretty frequent occurrence on our Facebook profiles is simply posting a graphic with a copy that says something like "Advertise a clan, grow your clan," and then including a call to action for the people in the actual copy of the post. A call to action which is meant to convince them to post their, let's say, advertisements in the comments, so the other players can find new clans or simply grow theirs. And another, I'm not really actually sure whether calling it posts would be proper, but Twitter communication, especially along indie devs, is quite important, as I kind of have a feeling that there is this community of indie game devs on Twitter, and cooperating with them can get you cross promotions, and you can also learn quite a lot, not only about other products, but about how things are done at different studios. Yeah, and when it comes to actually hiring people for the role, there is a pretty big dilemma often, whether you should outsource your social media or if you should hire an in-house employee who will deal with this stuff. And I'd say that having an in-house is usually more expensive, but you are sure that the person you hired is solely focused on your games and understands them better than any agency could. And the thing is that when you have an in-house, you can pretty much expect him to give 100% of his focus, talent, and whatnot to your brand. And when you deal with an agency, you probably won't get that. I'm not slandering agencies right now, but I simply believe that having an in-house is an is a huge advantage compared to using an agency, especially if you want to increase the number, well, the amount of content that you post, because agencies will try to simply earn more, and it is okay because they are a business after all, and their main purpose is to earn. And when it comes to team composition, I've drafted 4, let's say, examples, and starting from the smallest and least capable in terms of hiring people, studios, a marketing generalist is, I believe, a bare minimum. And you can also try, well, because this particular option, of course, results in hiring another person, but it is often not the case, and maybe sometimes a person who works on your team will be able to figure this stuff out and do social media management by themselves. And a social media or community specialist with graphic design skills is reasonable for small studios, such a small 2-person team. For slightly bigger studios, for medium ones, a social media and community specialist and a graphic designer is usually enough for them. And I really want to address that unfortunately, quite a lot of social media marketers, me including, we can't really do any proper stuff in Photoshop, and Canva is our best friend. And Canva is unfortunately only good for making mockups. I sometimes do make mockups in Canva, but I prefer doing them in Paint because I do realize that it kind of puts a bigger smile on the graphic designers that I work with. Yeah. And when it comes to an optimal social media team, it would consist of sub-teams of a social media manager, a user acquisition specialist, a community manager, a graphic designer, and a motion designer. And I have included motion designer here because I believe that it is very important to put emphasis on video in your communications. However, making video clips can be quite expensive, and it is quite an arduous task often. So having a specific person to do that stuff is absolutely great. And while some graphic designers can sort of do simple video clips, I believe that having a dedicated person pretty much makes more sense, and it results in higher quality content. And the sub-teams would focus on a part of your products, and the whole department could have a head of social media. And I believe I have reached the end of my presentation, and right now we can start a short Q&A session. Thanks. Okay, so any questions regarding the presentation or social media in general?
Yeah, it's fine. So if there is any particular difference in leading social media for mobile games and PC or console games?
I believe that PC and console games are more substantial by design. They usually feature some sort of a storyline. They are more often than not skill-based or, let's say, strategy-based. And I think that it is good to utilize these advantages, I'd say, when it comes to social media communication, as you can make a pretty nice narrative-driven storytelling and a lot of other buzzwords that I could fit into this particular answer. But I think that when it comes to PC and console titles, they can be a more fulfilling product, and the communication can be more interesting from the storytelling point of view. But on the other hand, I'm pretty much convinced that it is easier to acquire a user for a mobile game while using social media than in the other case.
So how to train your creativity to have content to post? For example, I'm a part of about 3-4 people in this studio, really small in this studio. And you said about Canva, right?
Canva,
so
yeah.
Canva, yeah. So I am able to create some things in Photoshop. I can edit the video and etc. etc. So okay for me, but I have a feeling that I already used everything. We have a horror game that lasts. The story is about 6 to 8 hours, let's say. But I have a feeling that I already used everything. I told everything that I could told people. How to train your creativity to come up with an idea, a new idea for content.
I believe that when it comes to training your creativity, there are like 3 main things that could be done. The first one is having having brainstorming sessions with other people in your team, or even maybe with your players, you know, the closest ones, and they can share quite a lot of interesting insight. There is a saying that a lot of people know everything about marketing, and then they start to work in it. But it is not inherently a bad thing, as people sometimes have some crazy ideas that could be implemented, usually after modifying them a bit, and they could work well. And when it comes to other things that could be done to enhance your creative output, I'd recommend benchmarking with other people. And by benchmarking, I mean reaching out on LinkedIn to professionals who are in the same, who occupy similar vacancies to yours, and then having a call with them and asking them how they do stuff, how do they struggle with creators block and such stuff. And the third one, I'm going to speak from the perspective of a person who doesn't really do graphic design stuff, but I do write copy. And when it comes to writing copy, I suppose that actually imposing some sort of limitations can drive you to figure out stuff more. And for example, let's say that you want to talk about a subplot in the game, and the subplot could be explained in about 400 words. And imagine a scenario in which you have to summarize the subplot in a length of a tweet, which is 280 characters at the moment, and also try to figure out a way to include some sort of a call to action. So, long story short, impose limitations and set goals. And I believe that this is a pretty good way to enhance your creative process.
Thanks.
No problems. Okay, any more questions? Okay, it seems there are no more questions. So thank you all for coming. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. And feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and you can also see the link to my blog. It is an actual internet address. And it includes quite a lot of my know-how and case studies and such stuff, so feel free to use it. And if you would want to cooperate in any way, send me an email and let's talk about it. Thank you.